Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Into the 99 podcast, where we've got 99 cards because Commander is number one. I am your necromancer with all the answers, Necrozach, joined by Lotus, Dan, and Brian. How are you guys doing today?
Hey,
Jeez,
doing
you
good.
guys should put a smile on your face. Come on, guys. It's Saturday. We're recording the podcast. Let's see those pearly whites.
But I am exhausted. This past week has been nothing but overtime, and I have been training some very awesome people at work, but English is not their first language. They are Costa Rican. So they're awesome. They're great. I've had a good time, and I've learned some phrases from them, but I am very tired.
The first question, can you tell me the curse words?
I don't know any yet. I can't get them to teach me those. I've taught them many.
That's how you slip them through on the podcast?
we can't tell this
What does that
language.
mean,
What
friendship?
So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for being here to listen to us today. And we also want to shout out a couple different things. We want to shout out Lotus with Brewing It Live. We want to shout out myself and Benson with Parallel Thoughts. Dan and your awesome lore show with other people's.
Your cohorts?
Your lore horts.
There we go. I like it. We're going to coin that term.
The lore horts. And I recently
Ladies of the night.
I recently started a new series where I interview people. So what's in the box? It's all cool. But more importantly, I want to thank the patrons that we have constantly supporting us and, making us feel good about the things that we do for giving us money to do them.
Yeah.
It has been fun to expand to an extra episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you know what? I really enjoy that we are starting to dive into the lore aspect of things because I'm just a dummy when it comes to I know
everything.
Nothing. Hey, now
you're not alone. I absolutely have no idea.
To be honest, I've always liked reading the magic books when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I'm revisiting the lore and just learning about stuff, the more I'm like, well, I have to build this. Now I've got to build that. And that's kind of actually what we wanted to talk about today. So I'll let Zach jump right into it. Oh, before we do jump into it, there is also a new time for Brewing It Live. Lotus?
Yes. So Brewing It Live is now on a Saturday instead of Sundays, and it's 4 p.m. EST, 2 p.m. MST, or 8 p.m. GMT.
That's
GMT
so many
is tea
time
time.
zones.
Yes. We have our supper and our crumpets.
like Greenwich Mean Time.
Yep.
Huh.
But yeah, anyway, Zach, what is the topic of the day?
So today we're going to be
read the episode title.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about how to build decks that are very thematic. This could be lore themes. This could be creatures only looking right themes, just any kind of obscure theme. We're going to try to help you guys to figure out how to brew those decks and give you some examples of how we brew those decks. So like I said earlier, Dan has been working on this lore podcast with a couple other people in our awesome community. And him and I have been talking quite a bit. He actually inspired me to make a whole architect based around Phyrexian commanders. And I started just going through and looking. I knew a couple of creatures I wanted to use as my commanders, but I didn't know who else I wanted to use. So how could I find these Phyrexian creatures that weren't just super obvious, like using the Praetors, for example, or just Yawgmoth? So it got me thinking, how can I help our listeners and help other people to make these kind of decks if they have a wish to do so?
I have to say that we've here on the podcast have had two. I'll include Dan in here. Three fantastic theme builders. Zach with his you built your Phyrexian box. I haven't played any of those decks yet. I don't believe. Dan just has so many decks that, of course, some of them are going to be theme based. And then Sherman.
They're all theme based.
Yeah, themed with money.
The theme is poor investments.
That's not true. You got to play against Belby.
Oh yes, I got to play against Belby. But I think the one deck that I think to me with theme that stands out is just Sherman's book deck. That every single
iconic,
yeah, just in our community here in Calgary, Sherman his just every card. If only he actually knew an artist to put books into the lands, but every card in there has a book or a scroll, something that is paper-esque.
Well, they
including
made
card itself.
the Knowledge is Power, whatever Jumpstart one.
Oh
And I
yeah, the
think he was
Book
starting to
Island.
collect those book islands. I think he was going off on those, which are hard to find.
Because you only got one per pack, and it wasn't guaranteed.
The Jumpstart lands are actually really
Spend some
cool.
money.
I do like silly theme decks and stuff because like sometimes they're not very strong and stuff. Like one of our old friends, Taylor, as well. She like built like a unicorn theme deck it was Morophon Unicorn and Horse Tribal.
Nice.
I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was good too. But you know what? Now that Zach mentioned it, I want to build the deck that everything's facing right or left.
One of my favorite YouTube series, Commander Versus, they have a bunch of silly things like that, where they'll just do those random decks. I think it's Jeremy. No, was it Jeremy or was it Justin? One of the two have a chair tribal deck where everyone's sitting in a chair.
Nice.
It's not very cool, good, but it's very it's fun to look at for sure.
This is my lazy deck. Everyone's sitting.
And if you've listened to Parallel Thoughts before, Benton and I build in a lot of very obscure themes. We'll take a commander and it might be something like Omnath, for example, where it's oh, that's definitely just going to be elemental tribal, or you're going to be landfalling. And him and I both build it with secret commanders. I built around Brash Tonner 4-color. He built around Zakama. He called it Zakama Blue, so Naya plus blue. So that's another thing too. Maybe there's a creature that you really like, but it's not legendary, or it doesn't have enough support to do the things you want to do. So how can you build these decks to make this work? So that's what we're going to attack. Exactly. Colossal Dreadmaw. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today is some of the resources I use, and by I mean we use when we're trying to build and brew these decks, and just some of the tips and tricks that I found work for when I'm building with basically no map at all.
People have maps?
Yeah, I build in a weird way.
Yeah,
What does my brain think of?
I think Dan and I are pretty akin spirits to how we build. Ryan always gives me crap because if you ever go on my Arca deck and look, you can tell what cards Ryan always says he can tell what cards I bought for the deck and what cards were in my collection. Because you'll just find random stuff, and I'm well, this is a sweet card, and I have it, so why wouldn't I use it?
That's probably our most common YouTube comment is probably, hey, why isn't blah 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 in this deck? And it's always in one of mine, and it's always just because I didn't have one or I couldn't find one when I was building it. Everyone wants to know why Villas isn't in Beldros, because nobody will trade a Villas into my store. Send them to me, please. I'll set up a PO box.
That's one of my favorite things to do. Every time I build a brand new commander deck, the first thing I do is I go through my entire collection, and I'll pull out cards that fit the color or fit the theme, and then just kind of go from there and start making cuts. And then I'll get to where it's well, this card isn't very good, but I never play it, so I want to try it in this deck for a while and see how it works. And then suddenly I have a new favorite card.
Yeah.
Like the 30 Village Rites they'll be sending you?
Yes, Village Rites works in every deck, so that's never a disappointment.
It is a pretty solid card, especially when your main theme is sacrifice.
And
I guess I was going to say, I guess that is another thing too, is as you build more decks and stuff, especially for anyone who listens long term, that Zach's theme is what 3 things?
Anyone?
Wait in the comments for Cloney.
I know what it is. Gain life.
Mill.
Yeah, group hug and mill.
All right. Okay.
No. I got this.
Sound?
I got this. Bolt.
Banding.
Ramp. Yes, banding.
All right.
This is my Menace deck. Menace Rampage.
Menace Rampage is sick. That's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry,
Tika's Dragon for days.
Oh.
What's that word? Menace?
Menace.
There we go.
It's really fun to say mechanics wrong, especially to people who don't know that you're saying it. By the way, that's another theme as well. Just say words wrong. It's very
Flample.
One of the people that we do podcast with, he doesn't like how I say Golgari. I'm saying it that way anyways. Golgari. You know who you are.
I'd say Dan has certain theme decks where cards force him to yell.
Yeah.
Oh, please read Arkhan's run.
I do that every time. We one of my brothers, as just an example, he made Sarulf, and every time he does Sarulf's thing, this is again, sorry for anyone audio listening, but every time he does Sarulf's effect, I go. It's pretty annoying and stuff. It's Party Wolf. It's you gotta sometimes. I'm like, don't
It's
do
not
that.
a party.
I'm like, please don't do this. Don't get rid of my things. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my gosh.
When he does it, he does have this stupid grin on his face too. You're just like,
Is this Connor?
no,
No,
it's
it's
Jacob.
Jacob.
Oh, it's Jacob? Oh, that sounded like a Connor. Oh, no. Connor only plays like turn 3 wins.
Yeah.
So I was so upset. I was playing my elves against Rolf, and he was just like tilts his head at me. I was like, just don't do it.
Sarulf is a very fun commander. I was for a while wondering how to build that. And yeah, Jacob just built a really
That way.
unique hatred deck with it. Get
Yeah.
rid of everything.
I'm
But
Ashen.
like
Ashen's built one as well, and he built it completely mutate. It's disgusting.
Love it.
Sarulf?
Yeah.
Ugh, I don't like that.
I love it. All right. So now that we've gone off rails, let's get back on rails. So I want to first talk about like what I like to do when I build lore themed decks, and then we can kind of just let the conversation evolve into whether it's going to. It'll get off rails. We'll try to pull it back on. The typical into the 99 stuff, right? So I'm going to shout out a couple different sources that I use whenever I try to brew any lore themed decks. So one of my favorite decks that I have right now, or I've had for a while, is Vati Il Dal. He's a very old legendary creature that's Golgari, and he's a Phyrexian specifically. So I want to do old border cards that cared about Phyrexian stuff as much as possible. And that's kind of more complicated than I thought it would be. So one of the first websites I like to use whenever I'm trying to do any kind of lore-based things in Commander is Scryfall. I started out when I was playing Magic. Gatherer was what I did. The Gatherer is not as good. It's just not. The
On
advanced
today's episode, Zach is wrong.
the advanced section for Scryfall gives you a ton of things, and this is what I end up using. So what I typically do is like I'll punch in my commander's colors, and then you can actually go. They have a box that says Lore Finder. It'll just you enter in whatever you're looking for, and it'll bring up cards. So like the example I gave was I typed in Phyrexian to Lore Finder, right, and just hit go. So what's awesome about this is it'll pull up cards that have lore about Phyrexians in it, and here on just this page I've got 149 cards that are all giving me some kind of lore with Phyrexia.
Sounds like you have 49 too many cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can easily start well, some of these are also Vanguard cards and some art cards, so you can nix those and we're probably right where we need to be.
What are Vanguard cards?
A really old, weird thing that they did.
Yeah.
Are they legal in anything?
I don't think so.
Judge?
I don't even know what they are. They're before my time.
Wow, I feel
They're
dated.
almost like a planes chase card where it's
Mhm.
supposed to be like a static ability.
I don't know.
Oh, right. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I didn't think they were. But that's just, more things maybe. That's a new thing you bring into your play group. Scryfall will teach you everything you need to know. So that's one way that I like to start getting an idea. Like, okay, I'm going to build a Phyrexian deck. I can start to narrow down, like, oh, here's a legendary creature. One of the first legendary creatures I roll across is Urtai. If I didn't already have an Urtai deck, I'd probably build an Urtai deck just based off of this stuff.
For the class, what is Urtai?
Urtai is a wizard legend, so he's an older creature, so it's kind of one of those weird. I'm sure he's been errated,
Mm.
but Urtai is 2 blue, white, and black. For a 3/4, you can pay 1 blue, tap him, you sacrifice a creature, an enchantment, and counter target spell. I have actually built this deck. It is sweet. It is one of my 4 Phyrexians.
I don't like it.
Mm.
So Connor rolled the table when I played it, but Dan, you can vouch, it was really good, right?
It does a lot of really cool things. Urte, just counter and sacrifice, like control and sacrifice, as I like to call it. Yeah, like it's it has just a lot of really, really cool, unique. Anything like Luminarch Ascension is just so much more valuable, right? The creature generation on the token, or even like a Sacred Mesa. Getting rid of your creatures to counter spells is amazing. Sacrificing enchantments and recurring them and stuff like it. It's a really, really fun way to play. I played Urte for a while, and it was just a little. The way I built it was just a little too oppressive for the table I was playing with at the time, so I didn't get many games in with it because they didn't like it.
That sounds like
News-
every deck you make.
Put Guile in that one. Ooh.
I have Guile on that.
I
But
know you do, Zach. I know you do.
newsflash, I built it as a Reanimator deck. Imagine that.
Oh,
I didn't have an Esper Reanimator deck. Now I do, and it's sweet. Brian, I actually could see you playing this deck because it does care about enchantments, and it's an
You would
Esper.
like Urte's playstyle.
Yeah, and it's
Okay,
an
that's a
Esper. Yeah, so
Urte and Jen. Those are probably the two decks I think Brian or Gwen. Gwen for Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
No, Urte and Jen, I just put that one together. I was using it for just like tiny leader stuff, but I changed it over into a full EDH deck. And it's a really, really fun deck. Enchantment themed decks, especially in a reanimator sense, are very fun.
you get to play bad cards, and they become very good, like Treacherous Blessing.
I was gonna say Treacherous Blessing.
I asked my LG because I actually only had one, and I needed a second one for a different deck, and I asked my LGS for one of them, and Cole, my buddy who like was giving me my cards, just looked at me. He's like, "Why do you want this card?" And I showed him Urtai, and he was like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." So that's one way. I like Scryfall a lot. Dan apparently is more of a Gatherer fan. That's fine,
Love Gatherer.
I'm not saying Gatherer is bad. I just prefer when I'm doing these more deep dives. I like doing Scryfall because I can get a little bit more precise.
Oh, yeah. Well, like you said too, right? With that syntax, you can do, especially if you don't know just a ton of the direction you're going. Like if you're looking to build straight from there, like I build from the old noggin most of the time, right? I'm like, I see a card, I'm like, this is interesting, and I don't have good self control, so I'm like, we're building 3 decks, let's go. But like if you're looking for, like you said, a Phyrexian theme box, you want to know everything that is Phyrexian. You don't want to just like, well, I know 1 or 2 things, right? Like until recently in the lore episode, I forgot that Urte was, or not Urte, Azuri was Phyrexian.
Yes, he is. That was one of the contenders for my box, but I already built Volrath, so I didn't want to go another blue-green. So I made Belby instead because I like black better.
so this is going to sound really stupid, but Volrath as in Volrath Stronghold?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
So
I know something. Wait.
same creature. So he has 2 printings as legendary creature. You have Volrath. I forget his name, his first one, but he's a mono black creature, which was very good, but it was mono black. Then they reprinted, or they made a new version that's Sultai, Volrath the Shape Stealer. That's the one I build around, and it is a blast to play.
Okay.
That was in the Kadena deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
That deck, off the rails. Yes, I know. I really want to say it. Those decks were really cool. That whole segment of commander decks, and they were completely overshadowed by Wizards' attempt to like make Brawl good, because they released those like commander decks, and then immediately after they did Chulane. I think it was Chulane, Corvold, Sir Gwen, actually Sir Gwen, Brian, not Jen. And then what is the other one?
Angie.
No,
No. It was the fairy.
Alila.
Yes.
Alila.
Angie was one of the actual ones. Yeah, so, well, and that's exactly it, right? Alila, Artful Provocateur, like, you make fairies on casting artifacts and enchantments. Like, that was a much stronger deck than, like, the discard Let's Play Madness deck.
But what was sweet about those decks too, because it's not really off rails by you bringing that up. Each of those decks had a new lore-based character which you could build around. Like we talked about Volrath, there was a new Greven that was much better than the old Greven, who's also Phyrexian. Then Gerard Capenshin, a new Gerard that was much better than the old one. And I'm fairly positive there was one more coalition character, but I can't remember who it was.
Probably. I think the 5 was Savine in that one too. I think it was Savine.
Yeah,
Kadena.
Savine. It was Savine, Anya,
Angie,
Kadena, and Poop. Can't remember.
Was it the Jirith, the token one or something?
Yeah. Yep. That's who it was. I didn't own that one, so I don't remember if there was an actual. You know what, guys? Contrary to popular belief, we do have access to the internet, so
that's true. Kadena, I actually just recently revisited that deck, and I did a bunch of upgrades because of Eudora. It turns them into a forest, and I could just be playing it wrong, but if a creature has morph and it becomes a forest, I can still morph it while it's face down, correct, Lotus?
As long as it doesn't remove its... Yeah, no, the ability's on the other side.
the other side of the card, right? Because you said cards have 3 sides or something, right?
Cards can have up to 3 sides.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I'll explain later. So you have the front. You have the front side, which is the normal side. You have the back side of a magic card, and then you have the other side of a magic card. So, for example, if you manifest a double-faced card, it's not the back of the card; it's the back of a card. It's a magic backing. So, if a dual-faced card needs a back, you have to give it a third face.
Okay.
I think you're making stuff up.
So cards are a pyramid.
Cards are basically pyramids.
There was. I figured out who it was. Sorry, Tangrath. That was the other coalition character that was out of the Girard deck. So yes, to put a bow on everything for that, we got a bunch of lore-centered characters and a lot of, there's just a lot of really cool things you can do with them. This is another, just things to look out for. They always slide them in, and it's fun.
Yeah, the Commander Legends obviously brought us a ton of good legendary creatures, but it also brings a lot of entertainment if you go and read who those creatures are, what they actually do. Like, talk to Benson about Togo, and he'll go off, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, like, really, really entertaining things, like, that just, you don't know how pivotal they are in the story until you actually start looking at them, because you're like, this is cool. Well, exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is fun when they make more cards like that, but the thing is, I think the most fun way to play Magic is to build on theme. I like to play spiky decks. I like to win, but I also just like to play silly things like that. Like I have a joke running with everyone that my masterpiece deck is about skipping my turns so I can play Clash of Clans. So the whole point of the deck is just cards that force me to skip my turn, like Chronoatog and stuff like that. It's a skip my turn tribal, and then it abuses things that wait until the end of my next turn, like single combat, so no one can cast creatures. I get it. I'm a bad person, but it's really, really fun to build with that because, yeah, there's more efficient ways to build a lot of the time. A lot of the time there is significantly better things, but I would say the more theme-based your deck is, the more your cards are going to be pet cards, and they're pet cards for a reason, right? You enjoy them so much, you put them in the deck, and they're fun to play. It's fun to assemble silly, nonsensical combos that don't actually do too much, but just like do fun things. It's fun to hit like the reanimate spell that you want out of the graveyard and bring this back, or cheat in an overwhelming splendor with sacrificing a land tax.
Well, it's like when I was gonna say, it's like I built Gorm the Master Chef. Everything in the deck is food themed, so you've got Feed the Swarm, Greed, baked into a pie. Everything in there is food thematic, and it's terrible, and I laugh every time I play it.
I loved that deck, seeing it.
Yeah, I really enjoy that deck, actually.
Well, and even bringing that up, I think you're going to get, when you build a deck based around such a theme, people are going to see that, A, you're having way more fun, right? It's undeniable that when you play with Zach is having a good time because he puts a lot of thought into the decks. Like you said with your Phyrexian box, right? You want them to be on theme. You want them to do what they're meant to do, right? Urte is supposed to be like a evil wizard scheming and throwing things away, right? Mm-hmm. Grevin is like supposed to run train on things.
How did you feel about Grevin?
That was real scary. Zach, really early in the game, like I think like turn 4, almost like one shot someone with commander damage because of that menace. Like it's pretty brutal. It's actually a really, really fun theme. I thought that was a really cool deck. I thought it was very strong.
That's the thing. So like themes don't always just have to be lore based. They could be mechanically based as well. So like I keep talking about my Phyrexians, and I'm going to continue to talk about them this episode because not only did I had a theme and a sub theme. So my theme was I was building around these Phyrexian characters, so I try to add as much Phyrexian influence as possible. But the sub theme was centered around what the card wants to do. So Belby, for example, if you're unfamiliar, Belby is a 2-drop, so a green and a black for a 2/2 zombie elf. And at the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colors for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. Belby is notorious for playing Eldrazi because it's so much mana so early on, and what are you going to do with that large amount of mana, right? I didn't like that. I don't like that playstyle. It feels very oppressive.
Don't be a degenerate.
Exactly. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to build a fun and silly deck. So my theme, still Phyrexian. My sub-theme, draft chaff tribal with wild pear. So
Nice.
my whole goal for that deck, I want to kill someone with bookworm.
Oh.
I want to play playing Glacial Worm as I'm looking for my card off Wild Pear. I want to.
So this is
And
the
I did
deck that you did Panglacial Worm.
Yep, and Brian,
Yes.
I played it. Brian can vouch for that. I played it and I had to explain what was happening because it's silly. And that deck was still fun because not always are you going to be able to build a theme deck and it be powerful, but if you in a lot of situations, if you steer into that theme, you would surprise yourself like how powerful a card can be. Like, yes, I don't want to pay 8 for a 7/7 with trample typically, but if I'm paying 8 for a 7/7 with trample on turn 3, that's fine. You know? And that's just the kind of stuff that I like as you start to look at your themes and your sub themes for these like thematic decks you want to do, you end up surprising yourself. So there are plenty different ways you can go with themes, and a bunch of different ways to build. I kind of want to touch on a couple more things that I use when I'm building around lore based decks, and then we can go into some other topics. So there are 2 YouTube channels I really like visiting for whenever I do like lore based stuff. And I'm sure you guys, I'm pretty sure Brian really likes this channel. I think Dan does too, but it's the Lorebrarians.
You did use the word right.
Okay. It just sounded weird. I don't know if it's just because I stutter a lot or because it sounds like I chew on words, something like that. But the Lorebrarians, an absolutely amazing YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed to them, you're really missing out on life. If you like Magic, then I guarantee you'll like the lore if you don't know it. But there have been so many episodes and so many like series where they'll do like one of the most recent ones, like Kaldheim Explained, just talking about just the planes, not even like the story going on, but just the planes. And it does a lot for the imagination. Like, man, I didn't really know this is what Strixhaven was about. I want to build this type of deck because of the plane of Strixhaven, and it helps you to understand why the cards are printed and made like they are.
Yeah, like on the Lorebrarians, like I saw them on Instagram, and then I'm pretty sure like I was starting following them like when they were just starting. They had like 100 subscribers or something like that. But like the more I went back to them and saw like their Ixalan, where they went over again, like Zach mentioned, they went over the whole plane. And they gave you the history of the land and everything along those lines. And then other one, probably my favorite, is explaining the vampires.
I was about to bring that up. It's the playlist is referred to as a study in, and then it'll talk. They've done
a study
angels.
In blood, I think this one.
Yeah, they've done angels, they've done dragons, they've done vampires, and I think demons.
Yeah, and I loved the whole backstory of, here's the original vampire that started off over on this plane.
Baron Singer.
Yeah, and then they spread, and like the whole it was awesome. It was absolutely amazing.
So we've played multiple Innistrad sets, and my dumb self never realized there were multiple vampire families.
Right?
I just didn't, like, we read all these names, and I just never put into, like, oh, there's the Voldarans, there's the Markovs, there's like quite a few different families, and until I listened to that, I was like, man, I didn't get that. And they are very thematic. Like, those families are very, very like distinguishable in the art, in the way the cards operate, and it made me want to build vampire decks of specific families.
Wasn't like one of them the Malakirs? Like they're the really bloodthirsty ones.
On Zendikar specifically. Yeah, that was another thing.
in Innistrad as well, I'm pretty sure that the set we're coming up to is Vampire Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So like a merging of those. Everyone thinks it's a merging of those families. I personally think they're going to go the Twilight way, bring the werewolves and the things together.
We get
I
hybrids.
see them pandering that way.
I mean,
this is
Edward, no.
What is this? This is our Twilight. This is our Twilight crossover.
I'm just saying, they're doing some crossovers. There's a lot of Twilight fans.
So that wouldn't be a secret lair that would appeal to me.
This is my Team Jacob deck.
But if it's a secret lair that appeals to other people, I will be happy for them. I will celebrate them for you.
The foiling is just sparkles.
Etched foiling special.
But I'm so sorry, but
Anyways, yes, if you're not following the Librarians, please go subscribe and listen to any of their stuff. Like Brian said, specifically, check out their A Study In playlist and look up for the vampire one. It was phenomenal. Another person I like following for their lore content because they are very, very knowledgeable is the Magic Historian. He has some hot takes. I'll be honest, I don't agree with a lot of his personal opinions, but his lore content is very on point. This guy knows what he's talking about, and he the topics that he has went into, I never knew about some of these characters like Felden. I had no clue about Felden's backstory, and it is super tragic, and it is
She
very
will
interesting.
Come back to me. That is the flavor text on that card.
And I had no clue what it meant at all. Like, I had no clue what that was in reference to. Felden had only been, I think, actually mentioned once before that, and it was in Felden's Cane.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really old card, right?
Yeah. Felden of the Third Path is a great card, by the way, and I really don't see enough of it.
I saw it last night.
Honestly, I think it's because there's not enough of it outside of, like, it was a pre-con deck card, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's a Judge promo.
Is there a Judge promo?
Yep.
So?
I didn't know that.
Yep. It's just it's the same art, but with the shooting star.
Lotus send it.
I don't own that one, sorry.
Well, talk to it. Adjudicate the judge system.
But
get them all.
Yeah, so the Magic Historian's another channel that's great. The first time I found anything on the Bloodline project was actually when I was looking stuff up on YouTube, and the Magic Historian came up, and I listened to one of his older episodes like quite a while ago, and that's kind of what really got me going into more lore than I wanted to. Really, it was a very big rabbit hole, so to speak, that I fell down because I had just finished the Brothers' War, and I was like, man, like, where does this go from here? Why is there a bad guy?
Everything, just all of it.
That's a funny question to ask.
Urza should have been Dimir or Esper at the very least. Probably Esper.
All I know is he got his head cut off.
It's for the best.
And that's only because I know it because of the unset.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So those are...
I don't know why.
He probably deserved it. He's wronged some people. He has wronged a great many people.
Didn't he blow up
Mediterranean?
Dominaria or something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know little bits, but I'm gonna actually start looking into lore more, especially with the ones you've recommended. But
kind of caused the Ice Age. Whoops.
Oh,
look, if you ever
12 planes in the shards.
If you ever want to argue with someone why Urza's a bad guy or just as bad as Yawgmoth, just look up the Metathran.
Yeah.
Just look up the Metathran.
Urza's very interesting as a creature.
Yes. So those are kind of my 3 stopping points when it comes to like anything lore based. Those are places I just like to go. Obviously the older books are phenomenal. I have read quite a few, and while the writing is it can be kind of dry, it is very cool and is very good. And it just kind of gets you, like, it reminds you that this isn't just a card game, it's also a story. And it kind of, when you play against someone who's got a deck that's like a Chandra deck or like a Jace deck, where they've built this deck around that character and their triumphs and their failures, it really, like, I think it makes you appreciate the game and the story a little bit more. So that's kind of what I do for lore decks. Do you guys have any kind of input about lore decks, or do you want to start moving on to more like some ideas for like thematic decks?
I generally just build based on the theme of what the person does. Like, so Multani is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in Multani either makes forests or like gets me forests or does something to make Multani considerably stronger or does something that lets me like imprison something in a tree because Multani did that in the story.
Yes. I've played that deck. That's exactly what that deck does.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got a tree go burr.
It does. It 100% does.
Not sure it's on the same sort of length as lore, but is tribal considered the same way? Well,
tribal's a good theme, right? So yeah.
I like thematic cards to themes of tribes. So, like my squirrels, everything has to, like, acorn launcher, and I'm looking forward to the new squirrel that's a legendary warrior coming up in Modern Horizons 2. So I build around thematical cards.
So I think oftentimes people separate the two, but lore is just another way to build on theme. So anything that most of the time, most of the time, the way you would go about approaching lore decks, you would do the same thing for going around like a tribal based deck. You would have the same kind of thought process. It's just your end results might be a little bit different.
Yeah, like how do I make this fit together? Like bring it all as one, like you said with Gorm. I think it's Gorm the Master Chef. I can't never remember that name for some reason. There's
Gordon
no
Ramsay.
More room. Yeah, there's no more room in my head for magic cards.
Gourmet chef.
Well,
everything new is it dragon, food chef, Golgari thing. Yeah,
that's awful.
It's I don't know. I remember too many cards, but yeah, like just it's exactly that. It's building it's inefficient building. That's the best way to look at like lore building and stuff. But again, it's fun building, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's different ways to play Commander. That's what makes Commander so fun. There's the competitive aspect of it. There's like the silly aspect and the social, like I'm having fun. But the deeper your theme goes and the more it ties together, I guarantee the more fun you will personally have.
The Morathon?
The more fun?
An example I gave, and I kind of want to touch on now, is when Benson and I did one of our most recent episodes of Parallel Thoughts, where we talked about our secret commanders that we build around. The commander that we built was for the 4-color Omnath, right? And both Benson and I unknowingly built secret commanders for the deck. So what I mean by that is Omnath was the commander for the deck. There's no getting around that. But that wasn't going to be the whole reason we built the deck. Like he built the deck centered around Zakama, and I built it centered around Brash Chauner, because we built 2 different decks into one. And so we built the deck in a way that it was like it would take advantage of the creatures that we want to be the commander while using a commander to reinforce those themes. So for me, it was pinging people and Brash Chaunering people to death, as I often like to do. For Benson, it was just being able to get multiple landfall triggers and abuse Zakama through Omnath. So what I did when I was trying to figure out how do I build a mono red deck with 3 additional colors, because that's essentially what we did. And what I find ends up working is when I'm building a deck without any kind of theme.
I will just jump us right back in here. I'm very sorry for audio listeners. And video, pretty much anyone. We're just trying a new platform right now, and generally it works great. Generally, but sometimes there's a few bugs. So Zach's computer combined with the new program we're using for recording just kind of cut him out. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get back into the episode and finish up on lore. I just wanted to talk about some of the best things you can be putting in for support for it. So I have a few cards here that are just like in general good cards. And I kind of want to go over colorless because they're the ones that can go into the most. So I just wanted to quickly touch on a few of those, see if Lotus has any of those or Brian has any of those that they really like, and we'll go from there. Number 1, I like Birthing Vows. If you're playing any tribal deck like something that's Eula, the ability to make shapeshifter tokens that are every creature type really does work. Another really good one, Coat of Arms. You see it come down in games that have huge creature types like slivers, as we were talking about on our break there. Elves, any of those kind of decks. There's a lot of really, really good cards that work for it.
I hate to interrupt you, but I'd prefer, is it Door of Destiny?
Door of Destiny is also
Door of
wonderful.
Destiny is better than Coat of Arms, purely because Coat of Arms affects every player, whereas Door of Destiny...
That's what I was gonna say.
See, generally though, I am out... Coat of Arms goes in like a token deck, right? Where I don't really care that Brian has like 6 angels because I have 600 creatures and hope they don't have a Rakdos charm.
I've found numerous while I sort my deck, so I've been setting them aside for you, Daniel.
Coat of Arms?
No. Rakdos Germs.
Hate that card. Can't stand it, to be honest. Obelisk of Erd is another really good one if you only want to buff yourself. A nice thing about it is it has Convoke. So in that same creature setting, you can get it out for essentially nothing. As it enters, you choose a creature type. It's 6 mana. Creatures of the chosen type you control get 2/2, which is really, really good again in something like elves, merfolk, like Lotus has a lot of... Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about before we ended up going there. When you're building tribal as well, tribal is not just a creature type. So with Kumena, You go ahead, Lotus. Now explain this. Now I remember where I was going.
Okay, so you have tribal cards that are not creatures. So, like, you have tribal instants. So in goblins, you have Tarfire, which is a instant goblin tribal. You have in Merfolk, you have Mero Commerce, which is a enchantment tribal. And I believe there's that new one that's coming out that's Eldrazi, is it? There's that new tribal card coming out in Modern Horizons 2.
Is it a tribal Eldrazi card?
I don't know what it is, but I remember there's a tribal card. I can't remember what it is, if I'm totally honest.
I don't know any Eldrazi stuff, because I don't believe they exist in my world.
But yeah, tribal can be your creatures, and it can be other permanents or spells.
Oh, they even have special tribal enchantments.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So it's what is the card? I can't remember if you just
Mero Commerce.
Mero Commerce, yeah. So you can fetch that with the thing
anything
that fetches Merfolk, yeah.
Yeah, anything that searches for a Merfolk, it will trigger that because it is a Merfolk.
And Tarfire the same thing for a goblin. If it's
you can Goblin Matron for it.
Goblin. Okay. I like stuff like that because it's a fun rules interaction and no one really sees it coming. All is Dust is a tribal Eldrazi sorcery.
That's the one, yeah.
All is Dust is a great card. And
that one, yeah.
Eldrazi Conscription. Eldrazi Conscription is also pretty wonderful. And Bitter Blossom. How can I forget Bitter Blossom?
Bitter Blossom.
That card's expansive.
Bitter Blossom, yeah.
It's
Blossom
good.
desperately needs another reprint. It's a great card. Although, I think it was from a Brewing It Live. Either you or Han were talking about the War of the Spark one that does the same thing, the zombie army.
Dreadhorde Invasion.
Love that card.
Since you guys mentioned that one, I've really, really liked that. And I like to add it into decks when I'm able to right now. Like, it's just a really, really fun card to play. Your zombie gets bigger, you eventually get some lifelink, and if you have anything that can sacrifice it like you would be doing with Bitter Blossom tokens, if that's your theme, then you're getting it at a fraction of the price. Like, what does that cost? Like 30 cents?
Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it's definitely not an expensive card. It's not like the $60 or $70 Bitter Blossom is. But that is another fun part of building decks in this realm, is that you can get away with a lot of really, really budget cards. That's another great perk. That's the word. Sorry, my brain stopped working. Another great perk of building a theme or lore deck is just being able to put silly cards in that kind of might not be the most ideal card, but they're still pretty fun cards to play.
It makes it nicer for my purse, because I don't have the collection you have, Dan. So well, I pick up really jank cards, like, I don't know, I just pick this one off the list. Conversion. They're like 10p cards. You build decks around silly themes, but you get to use cards that you overlook in more focused decks.
I was talking earlier to everyone pretty much individually before we started recording. Spoiler alert, everyone who is listening to this, the lore episode this week is going to be on Dak and Blackblade. So first, it's going to be a card that you're not going to be able to find right now. There's two printings of it. They're the same looking card. One has a black border, one has a white border, and it's either a $2 card or a $300 card. And I'll give you a spoiler alert, they're all sold out everywhere. So if you have the white border one, get your Sharpie out, maybe make yourself a profit. But that is the only difference. The same symbol, the same everything. But as soon as Dak and Blackblade was spoiled in the Modern Horizons art, everyone just rushed out to buy them. And it's a pretty cool card, and that's why we're going over it this week. But in it intersects with Chromium. And Chromium was in one of the core sets, I believe. Long story short, I'm building Chromium simply for the stupid reason that Chromium turns into a human. You can discard a card and turn it into a human. And the human's name in the lore is Ham the Trickery Man. And I just think that's the funniest thing in the world. You can turn Chromium into unblockable. So if someone tries to get rid of Chromium, you just, Ham the Trickery Man. And I just am going to have a really, really good time with this weird madness deck. But, there's a lot of cards in it that no one plays because they're not good. And that's why I'm really, really excited to build this deck with these weird blue madness cards. You never see a blue madness theme deck. I didn't even know there was madness in blue generally. And then also I'm putting things like Evangelize in it because I think it's funny. to buy back and take people's creatures if I have the mana.
I don't like that.
No.
Yeah,
Zach, why did you put Dan's face on?
I'm gonna build this deck. My version of it is, I think it's funny. It's Ham the Trickery Man. We've got Jim, who makes amazing versions. If you ever need something, reach out, because that's Pyrexia on Instagram. It's just a treat to work with for stuff. And he's gonna make me a Ham the Trickery Man, so I could flip it back and forth when I do it. And I just picture Ham the Trickery Man as some big fat guy who's supposed to be on the council. I want it so bad. But it's going to be an annoying cards tribal. Annoying cards and annoying interactions. That's the whole point of it. Anyone who plays in our play group on Discord is going to probably have to ping one of the judges like Lotus and be like, how does this nonsense interact with like the layer of like an enchantment giving Ham who loses all the abilities getting stuff, but then like static effects being applied to it. I need a Halvar God of Battle for the deck. It's going to be a really unique time, but I'm excited to play it. And I think that although I plan to be excessively annoying with the deck, I think people are going to have fun because the theme is funny. Like it's arguably hilarious. Like it's going to be annoying, yes, but if you watch it on one of our YouTube videos or something, you'll probably enjoy it.
I don't know.
I'll
You
be
said that all
laughing.
these decks are going to be fun and everything. Just like, oh yes, I built Niv Miral. It's board white tribal. It's going to be fun.
That deck is fun. And that is
Fun
another.
for who?
Yeah. So like I said, it's kind
See
of
how he
unfortunate-
doesn't answer that?
Yeah.
it is fun for me. I got a full art Doomsday. Where do you want me to put it?
Not
It's-
there.
That's where it goes.
Or you
Ne-
put it there and you just don't bring it out.
No, Nevinyrral was actually a very fun deck to play, but it did really salt the table. Also, just quick trick of the trade, if you're ever making a Nevinyrral board wipe deck, you have to go for people's pity. Don't let them know it's board wipe tribal. Don't be like, hey guys, I'm running 30 board wipes in the deck. That's going to get you targeted. I found that out. But if you just like pretend that you're just like getting, mana flooded, I can't even get any of these cards out. Everyone just kind of leaves you alone, and then you hit that magical 5 mana, and then you can just repeatedly like Wrath of God, single combat. Like you can just time wipe the it's a really, really fun play style. To be honest, I make pretty annoying decks sometimes. If we're being honest with the groups, like
The first step is acceptance, Dan.
it's so funny that I just make just silly like chaos, like here's Norn the Wary, and it's just gonna blink in and out, and it's hilarious. Then I'm like, I'm gonna try hit 1,000 tokens, and everyone's like, okay, this is like a cool play style, and I'm like, board wipe tribal. I'm like, what? Yeah, it's like 50 board wipes. It's gonna be a great time. Though I've played it twice, and both games were like 3.5 hour long games. It was
Oh my
at a
god.
certain point I was like, you guys have to kill me. Please strike me down. I've become too powerful.
It would be nice if we could, but you keep getting rid of everything to kill you.
Everything except Planeswalker, which is something else that annoys people. Like I'm sitting there just ticking Planeswalkers up while they're trying to. I put a Cyclonic Rift in that deck, Brian. Felt so dirty. It felt so bad.
Hey, I feel proud of you.
I didn't like it. Didn't like it. I had to do it to them though, Brian. It's a board wipe tribal. What do you want me to say?
Well, I guess so. Just
But yeah, so I did want to, like I said, this one might be a little bit shorter. I don't really know exactly where our time is at because we had that interruption. But I do want to just quickly touch on our favorite personal themes, as well as I have a few suggestions of themes you should build if you've never built. And I want to go into that in another episode with why, but I will start out with Brian. Do you have a favorite theme?
I like building enchantments, but I mainly I build tribal decks, so elves, zombies, goblins. Just I like the synergies of creatures because I find I could build an artifact deck, but I find artifacts are too I've been saying this a lot because Osgir has recently come out, and Osgir is just a powerhouse out of the box. Artifacts are inherently strong, so I try to avoid building artifact themed or artifact synergy decks because they just seem too powerful, and that's not the games that I want to play. Right now, my favorite, Brina. Politics, amazing. I just have so much fun going, hey, do you want to be my secret rendezvous? We don't have Romeo and Juliet this. I really enjoy that theme of deck is just politicizing everything and having a lot of fun that way.
You haven't been able to really experience that too much. A lot of the time you are a running joke is kill Brian first, right? So now a deck that relies on making deals is probably a really, really fun time to actually get into.
Well, that's the thing. So, like, the whole Brian dies first thing. So, do you know what I've done? Instead of gearing up for the all-out calamity of war, because my girlfriend would not enjoy it. We would not have this house. Like, if I needed to pay the money to get my decks to a reasonable limit that I can 3v1 people like Dan can, I'd be living in a box with all my cardboard, and then I'd be gone of all my cardboard because it'd get wet and ruined. But yeah, like, so I've gone the opposite route. I've slowly started to tick my decks back in the power level, but I've been really enjoying our pre-con league and playing this politics deck because we're all kind of at an even ground. That
has been pretty cool to see people just like forced to play a lower level than they normally do.
Yeah. And it does add like an extra layer of competition, because I start at this level at like the scope of having that rule zero conversation or that what power level are you playing doesn't happen because you started at pre-con, you've gotten a few extra dollars here, like where does your deck actually stand? It's kind of a gray area right now as you go in because you have to get your games in. You can't really kind of pick and choose who you want to play against, but you kind of can, but you can't. Yeah. So it's really interesting that way, trying to build it and everything like that. So, but I've the only things I've added to my deck are more removal, like targeted removal to get rid of those problematic cards, because the cards that I want to play with are already in the deck. It is a political deck, and I can politicize a lot of different things, and I have a lot of fun. But yeah, most of my themes that I enjoy playing are tribal. I don't know lore. I don't know all this other stuff to really kind of build around. So I prefer the tribal themes. Like, I'm going to play my elf deck, or I'm going to play my goblins, or I'm going to play my human tribal that I feed to my cat.
Oh, I did really like that theme, the Trin and Silver. That was a really fun deck to build.
And you explained it so well that I had to go out and build it.
I felt that way about Zach's clerics, but I still just have never built that cleric deck. I really want to.
His definitely has more boom than mine.
Yeah, sell me that aura deck, Brian. What are we talking about? We'll discuss it on air. Lotus, do you have like a favorite tribe or theme that you like to go down the rabbit hole of?
So at this moment in time, I love merfolk, I love squirrels, I love goblins. They're my three big themes that I will stick by. I obviously have my angel deck, my mono white deck with the counters, but the biggest thing I like to do is run those obscure cards and use as much rules knowledge I have to make those odd, janky cards work for me in a way that no one expects. And I see a commander like Gorm, the Master Chef, and then I just build a deck that's completely around him. Toski was the other one. They're just cards that I think people overlook, and they're in the bulk pile. I will quite happily dumpster dive and build a deck from the trash and just make the best interactions I can possible.
I actually like that a lot. The ability to... Rule knowledge is the best way to get better at the game. No matter how good your cards are, if you don't understand your combos and stuff like that, like, you can't just hand somebody a Get Rog deck and then say, like, hey, figure out how to dredge this deck more salvage, right? It sounds like I'm speaking like a foreign language to most people when I'm saying stuff like that. Like, it's a weird discard this, draw this kind of loop that you get yourself into. You repeat a bunch of cleanup steps, and it's just a whole big nightmare until you get to your win. A lot of people can't understand that, right? You can't just give someone an expensive deck. There are some, like, you can probably give most people an Agila deck. They can figure out that, like, warriors go brrr. Yeah. But, like, other than that, like, the more rules interaction you have, or, like, the more rules knowledge and just, like, base game knowledge you have, the better you can do. One of my favorite kills that I've gotten was kind of with that. Somebody, I went to Sylvan Scrying for a land, and somebody Pact of Negationed it. And I asked them what mana they had available, and they told me how many mana they had. So then I crop rotationed instead for a strip mine and got rid of their second blue source, so they died on their upkeep.
Nice.
Because they couldn't. It was just a really, really fun way to kill them, because they did have the mana to pay for the pact, but I just got rid of that one. Rule knowledge is the best way, and brushing up on it and just learning interesting interactions, it does give you such a leg up, and building with that knowledge is a really good way to get into increasing your skill at Magic.
Yep.
Well, it's like there's two things in Magic that you need to do. Play lands. So what do? I play Manaless Dredge. I play a deck with no lands and break the first rule. The second rule is play spells. So I built a deck that's 99 lands and a commander. And I'm one of those people that go, you can't do this, watch me. I will go and do something that you can't do. I just think if you can break the fundamentals of the game, like playing a deck with no mana, playing a deck with no spells, and still having a great time and keeping up with the pod, I think that's priceless.
I like that a lot. It is fun to see budget decks go head to head with like better, not better, but higher budgets.
Yeah,
budgets is the wrong
like I can build a deck for about $50 to $100, and I can go up against your deck, Dan. Your mana base is 4 times more expensive than my whole deck.
It is really, I would say, price wise, I do think that's the hardest range to build efficiently. And like, I would say $150 and under, it is like, it's not impossible, but you have to be good at the game to build at like that budget and stuff, right? The higher your budget, the easier it is to build, but like the more you can get off track, right? There's a certain point of diminishing returns where like, yeah, does a second, like, will adding a bio really make this, my Lathril deck perform better, my elves? Probably not that much better for the budget, you know, especially in EDH when you have like the undergrowth stadiums and stuff like that can kind of do a similar thing. Like, yeah, they can't be fetched. But again, if I'm throwing fetch lands into it, how much better is it going to make my elf deck? Like, is it going to get my turn 1 Land of War Elf out a little bit faster? No, like, come on. Right?
Yeah.
So there is that. For me, everyone will be shocked to find out it's tokens. I build token decks as much as I can. I just love making tokens and being annoying with tokens.
Hence why I
Rakdos
have my
Charm
Xyros deck.
Yeah, Rakdos Charm is my natural enemy. It's so good. That and Massacre Worm. I keep seeing Massacre Worm after its reprint, and it's just a...
I'm going to start packing illness in the ranks more often, I think.
That's also a good way to get rid of me. Any of those things, like I like to... I durdle a lot. Like, I really like to make just too many tokens because I think it's funny. But I would say either that or, in general, I just like to play things that have landfall. I think that landfall and tokens are my 2 absolute favorite mechanics. I love everything with landfall. I have a ton of lands matters deck. Like, I think, as ridiculous as it sounds, I think it's 30. Like, I really have a lot of like landfall based, like Windgrace, Omnoth, Multani as a lands matter deck. Like, I just really like to build land decks because it's so much easier to get them consistent. It's very easy for me to convince the table. You know, I'm a charming talker sometimes, and I can tempt people into that tent with discovery. I don't know why anyone ever takes the deal, but always take the deal. Always do it. Come on, guys. And I always say it, like I say it in turn order. I'm like, whoa, you're going to be the one to miss out. And so many people are like, oh, I won't take it. No. Everyone wants one.
It's always that first person. I'm not going to take it. The other 2? Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, and my other thing too is I already tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm spending 4 mana and I'm getting the land I want. I'm already going to get it. Like, you're just going to let me get a few more of these. If you all take it, I'll take 2 basics and we'll just call it a day. Sometimes I make deals and sometimes I just say, hey, we'll do that. I do like when people are like, oh, we'll get all strip mines. And I'm like, interesting. I will go get strip mines. Let's play. Me with an Ancient Green Warden on the field and an Azus out so I can play 8 lands a turn. All right. Get your strip mines, gentlemen. No, I would say I like those. If you haven't build, there's different kind of archetypes, but I think things that are really fun is build a 5-color deck and do it in a mana base that actually works. And I would say one of 2 things for it. Build slivers, because slivers are fun. You don't have to have all the expensive slivers in them. You don't need all the sliver lords. Slivers are a great time. Lotus was talking about them earlier. Do it. They're a blast. You'll get to see what playing against the table is like every game. I love slivers.
I'm going to sanitize. I'll sanitize my hand after playing.
It's that though, or I would play something like Golos, because Golos has such a variety of play.
Golos curses.
Yeah, like Golos curses, but just play gates. I think not enough people play gate-themed Magic decks, and it's a really, really fun win condition to build into things. I think that it's like, because not everyone's going to like playing Group Hug, not everyone likes playing Chaos. But it is really fun to just count gates. Like, no matter who you are and stuff, it is really fun to be like, that is gate number 7 and stuff, right? You're kind of going on a little adventure. And I think Golos is probably the best commander to do that in, although you can do it in any 5-color commander. The new Sisse is really, really fun. You can also do it in slivers. Just a
Kenrith.
budget fun. Yeah, fun way to play. I would say do that. And then I would also say make a control deck, because not everyone likes playing control, but it is really fun to get into the mindset and actually understand how a deck like that functions and stuff. Because again, you might not like being counterspelled and stuff, but build a deck that functions on counterspells and you'll understand that it is hilarious to do. It is really fun to do. Like, you'll have a good time laughing. Like just try, I guess what I'm saying is, like, try themes that are outside of your wheelhouse if you have like the budget and ability to.
One thing I would say is, if there is an archetype you don't like, build it and play it yourself, because you might not like playing it or playing against it, but you'll learn how it works to play against it better.
Yep. I really like, I hate playing against control decks. It's rough, but I like playing control decks. It's very fun. It's a different experience, like you said, right? To be in the pilot seat of it. Like, it's easy on the outside to be like, oh, Boros sucks. It's not fun. White doesn't have enough card draw. It needs 10 more lands per turn. I get it. But it is fun to overrun people with like tokens. And it is fun to just like Hero of Bladehold people and Hero of Oxid Ridge them. It's fun to play things. Sometimes simple is good, right? Not everything has to be complex. Sometimes like the tribe is, I'm going to swing at everyone. I'm playing Aroas. It's combat every turn. Combat day every day.
Hence why I just like playing tribal. I just play like all my decks are just creatures. Like I rarely have these combo centric decks. I just like the pure. Well, I was about to say purity, but that seems like the wrong word to use. I was like the simpleness and like the still explosive turns you can get with a tribal deck, like zombies. Like, ooh, the big the Walking Dead are coming back.
A really good time.
Yeah. Like, oh, sacrifice them, deal damage, bring them back from their graveyard. Just it's shenanigans. Shenanigans are afoot when you play tribal.
Yeah. It is really fun to play zombie omniscience in EDH Rooftop Storm. That's a really fun card to get going. I don't know, like I just think that like in general there is no wrong way to build when you're playing EDH. Everyone has their own theme. It's not always just I win piles. Obviously there's a time and a place for that, but just going forward, what I probably want to end off here is just understand that people put a lot of effort into building their decks, and try to not be salty if you're just losing against one of these themes, because like no one likes to lose games. It's human nature to want to win, but at the same time, like, you don't really know what other people, like, what it means to them and stuff, right? Maybe it was like a family member they were really close to and they had a bunch of like experiences where they saw bears together and that's why they like their bear tribal. Or maybe they feel represented by this kind of a card and that's why they wanted to build it and stuff. It kind of is a bummer if like you don't like their theme and archetype and you just kind of are negative about it. It's really fun for people to build decks and just let them express their themes and stuff. Give people compliments and say like, hey, that was a really cool deck and stuff. I really liked how you hit me with 150 merfolk that were way too big. And, you know, let people have a good time. And yeah.
It's the most expressive format, and I think we should keep it that way.
Yep.
I 100%. Agree. As long as Brian dies first in games, I'm happy.
That's it, yeah.
And if you dare Cyclonic Rift me, I'm coming for you.
I always tell you
I'm
when
still
I have
waiting.
it in my hand, Dan.
I'm still waiting.
I always tell you when I have it in my hand.
Brian does. Every time. Brian, horrible poker player. Daniel wouldn't like what I have in my hand. Brian, is it a Cyclonic Rift? Maybe. Brian signs his own death every game. But with that, yeah, I will wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Let them know where they can find our stuff here.
Yeah, so make sure your one-stop shop, IntoThe99.com. You can find written articles by members of the community along with members of our cast. As well, make sure tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for the new Brewing It Live time slot. As well, we have Parallel Thoughts with Benson and Zach that can be found on our YouTube channel, as well as Zach's new show, What's in the Box. Hey, if you want to check out our patron exclusive podcast episodes, you know what you have to do. Check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/into the99. As well, you can check out our merch store, which is conveniently linked on our website, intothe99.com. And those are the two best ways to help support us. Also, if you do enjoy our content, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And until next time, guys, have a great one.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
Take care.
And we're done.